Jack, when you think back on the goalless drop in Dingwall, did you see it as a setback? And if so, does that kind of show how far you've come with this team over the last few months?
Only a setback in terms of not taking 3 points in the game rather than one. The nature of football is that, ironically, we played much better in Dingwall than we had done, for example, at Rugby Park or Tannadice, and yet we won both of those matches and we didn't win the game of the weekend. So that happens consistently in football, that the level of performance doesn't always reflect what you take from the game. But for me, that to produce that type of performance away from home in the Premier League and create so much, I think is reflective of how far we've came as a squad, and also the disappointment we felt in not winning the game. Collectively, I think shows how far we've progressed as well. So it was one of those days that, although frustrated by the end result, I think there were so many good things within the performance and even the reaction to not winning the game that was encouraging for us.
Kelly, this weekend, what did you make of the way that they reacted to everything that had gone on there, with the players having to isolate, and they'd asked for a postponement of the game, and you know, there was maybe a few words said about that, and then they go and put in a performance like that away at Livingston?
I think it's unsurprising is probably the most apt way to describe it, just because of what that core group has achieved in recent times for that club. Both under Steve and now under Alex, I think they have a core group that have consistently produced results and know how to get points from games. Good quality within that as well. So I think that experience that Alex has within his group and that steeliness within their character, I think it was reflected in that performance and result at Livingston. And the recent form beyond that is also very good as well. So we're in the midst of a really challenging run of fixtures. We've got a lot of games away from home and a lot of tough fixtures, and that is another one off them on Saturday.
Kelly, are now being investigated by the league over these COVID procedures. We've seen St Mirren have had to cancel some games, but the league is looking for a bit of guidance from the clubs as to whether they can, come up with a framework that kind of sets this in stone, what's going to happen. Would you welcome that being clarified over the next few weeks?
I think there's probably a couple of parts to that, Jamie, for me. I think, first of all, I think I've regularly spoken about the preference for clarity and consistency of message and information. But I've respected the fact that the world we're living in, if you take it just specific to football, has had challenges that have been unforeseen, if you like, as we've progressed through the pre-season and early season. And then beyond that, I think that we seem at times to be desperate to search for blame, when the truth is, if clubs are doing what we're required to do, which I believe clubs are, then there's not much more we can do than that. And unless there's some real blatant disregard for the regulations, which again, I'd be confident that I think players, clubs, staff are respectful of, then there isn't anybody to blame for it. And that's, I think, the thing we have to be careful of. In the current climate, we don't just search for somebody to blame. And every time there's positive cases, we seem to assume that somebody has done something wrong, other than it being an outcome of what is going on currently. So, but again, flipping it right back to the first point, I think once there is clarity and consistency in message, then that helps everybody move forward.
Yes, this will be lastly from me. I suppose it's a situation where it is not sustainable for games to continue being postponed. We're going to get the 38-game season that everyone's hoping for.
Yeah, I still think that there is room for games to be played, and I also think maybe Brian Rice commented on this recently at Hamilton, that ultimately if the situation would mean that you had to play 3 and 4 games in a week, has happened in Scottish football history, and not so distant past that happened, because of teams' involvement in European football, etc. If that's what we have to do to complete a season, then I don't think you would find any player, manager or coach complaining about it. So, if we ended up with games postponed that we had to squeeze in to a closer period, then so be it. I certainly don't think it's something that we should become too worried or paranoid about. It's a kind of modern day curse that we get panicky about having to play a certain number of games in a certain period of time, and how that affects players' physical, mental welfare at times. Players like playing football. and managers like managing teams that play football. So if we have to play loads of games in a short period, so be it. And hopefully it won't come to that.
Cheers, Jack.
Cheers, Jamie. Thank you.
Just a few managers have spoken about it, like Stephen Robinson, Jim Goodwin, just saying how frustrating it is that this is sort of the theme of the season, really, all these COVID problems. I'm assuming you probably have similar feelings.
Do you know what? I'm genuinely okay with that. We've lost a player, an important player for the game. But we've been relatively okay in terms of the instances we've had the positive tests. And to be honest, I don't waste time and energy thinking about it because it's nothing I can affect. I can affect, the club can affect the protocol and guidelines we put in place as a club, and we adhere to them. One of my players returning a positive result, and the consequences of that I can't affect. What I can affect is how I deal with the fixture if players missed and so on. I genuinely think it's adjusting your mindset to know that this is going to happen this season and then just dealing with it accordingly. It's a new challenge for coaches and managers, but it's one that part of your job is to problem solve. And this is just another new problem, if you like, through the course of this season.
This is us going into sort of the second round of fixtures, dealing with that, and obviously the usual rigours of a Premiership campaign. How have you sort of viewed the first stage of the opening of the season?
For us specifically as a club?
Yeah, for you specifically.
It's been hugely encouraging, obviously, for us in terms of the points total we have at this stage. If we were to replicate that over the course of the season, then we would be in a very good position come the end of it. It's easier said than done to do that, but I think it's also given us a good gauge of where we feel we can be at, and it's given the opportunity for the players to judge themselves as well. And so there's been a lot of encouragement from that first set of fixtures for us. The aim is now obviously to at least replicate that again, if not better it over the next set of fixtures that come around.
Christian was saying that he's probably won off 100 goals in his total career to just early on. How impressed have you been sort of with him and Kevin Nisbet in recent weeks? Christian obviously perhaps not scoring as much as he would like, but Kevin's still doing the work up front.
There isn't that common that teams play with two strikers now, and we've had to be brave in trying to play that way a lot this season, but we believe that it's worth doing it because of the attributes that the two of them have and how they've played together, and also the very obvious contribution they made in terms of goals this season. So Christian I've spoken about often enough that he's incredibly unselfish in his work, and he has an influence on how we play, and he helps other players around him. And I think his presence has helped Kevin settle so quickly into life in the Premiership as well. So didn't realise that Christian had that milestone close. And if you can go and achieve that tomorrow, fantastic for us in terms of the game tomorrow, but also terrific for him as a player to reach that milestone as well.
Just talking about the two strikers there, Jack. Do you think it goes unnoticed, the kind of defensive work that they do? When we were speaking to Christian about 20 minutes ago, he was highlighting how important it is that he starts a defensive press, and it's a strength of his game, and that has helped you be so solid defensively all season.
It's imperative if you're going to play that way, because we at times will give up a player in the middle of the pitch, and that has its challenges as well. So in all honesty, it's new for players at times because of the trend towards playing with one striker and what that one striker has behind them in terms of players that will do that defensive type of work. So we've had to work quite hard on it and getting Christian and Kevin to understand that when they play as a pair about the responsibilities they have in terms of the balance they have as a front two and how they help us defensively. But I think the players behind them would recognise the part they play in it. And as always, to defend properly and keep clean sheets, which we've done much better this season, then it needs to be a collective effort.
You talk about replicating the first 11 games this season. If you could do that all the way through the campaign, it'd be fantastic. Do you think you still have levels to go up? And how important is it to get back ahead of Aberdeen in that battle for third place?
I think it's only important come last game of the season. It's of utmost importance because when it matters the most. So, we had been in that position for the first 10 fixtures of the season or 10 rounds of the season, and obviously Aberdeen's result midweek took them above us. So, that first 10 weeks counts for nothing, if you like. So we, at the end of the season is the time that matters for us. But no, I think for us, we feel as if we've, while I still think we've got some improvement, we've been good. We have been good. It's not like we've underperformed. I think we've managed to win games in different ways as well. We've won games by playing well. picked up points by playing well, and then particularly early in the season we probably gathered points when we weren't quite at our best. So I think that's been encouraging, that we've shown different sides to our game, and we're going to need that. I mentioned earlier about the challenging run of fixtures we're in the midst of at the moment, the number of away games we have, and the opposition we face in those away games. So we're going to need those qualities over these next 6 fixtures as well.
So just finally from me, Jack, any injuries from last weekend, and how's everyone getting on? How's the squad?
No, we exactly as we were, with the exception of the return of Josh Doig. Obviously, Josh was released from his quarantine period on Thursday, so he's only had limited time back with us, but he will return to the squad. Scott Allen, Jamie Murphy, Dre Wright are still absent, but everybody else is fit. Thank you.
Hi Jack, it's Ali from the Go Radio Football Show here. I just wanted to, you've touched on it already, but 21 points in 11 games, it's joint third best Hibs return. With all, of course, the expectations, have they changed so far after the first round of fixtures?
Not internally, Ali. I think we spoke pre-season about what we wanted to achieve this season, and we have our own targets that remain in-house, and we set them in kind of blocks of fixtures. But by achieving those targets in these blocks, we know that we'll have a successful season, and we had to make the ambition achievable as well. I don't think there was any point in setting something that the players didn't think they could get to. So I think we are where we wanted to be, but we've had to be good to do that. So it's just a constant reminder of the players. There's a balance between them taking confidence from that, but equally being acutely aware constantly of why they've picked up points, knowing that they can't drop below the standards, because in this league, you do that, then you can quickly find yourself and gather momentum going the other direction. So I think we're okay at the moment. I've set the standard, as we set the players' lofty ambitions, and at the moment they're doing very well in trying to achieve them.
And of course, Kyle McGuinness has joined into the squad. How's he settling in?
Been pleased with how he's adapted to the club. It's he's moved through to the East as well, which as a young man is different again. So that's pleasing. He's settled in well. He probably is a little bit ahead of where we thought we'd be at. The fact he's played so many minutes, both in the Betfred and obviously started last weekend's league game. I have to constantly remind myself of how long he's been out for, and not get too far ahead of ourselves with him, and the same for him. But he's said that, pleased that we've already had him available. I think he's shown in parts of those games what he will bring to us when he gets himself fully up to speed. So really pleased with how quickly he's adapted to life through here.
And forgive me if you've already touched on this, I was a wee bit late to the party, but the SPFL, thoughts on the handing out of prospective mandatory 3-0 defeats should your side, fortunately you've not too much been affected by COVID, but should you be affected, how do you feel about that?
I said earlier that I do think we have this tendency to look to blame people constantly. I think that somebody has done something wrong, and we as a profession are adhering to probably amongst other professions the strict guidelines and protocols out there. And by and large, I know there was a couple of exceptions to that earlier, but I think in recent times when people have had a greater and clearer understanding, and clubs have made sure that players are aware and staff are aware of that, there will be unfortunate sets of circumstances that people will test positive for this virus, as we see in the wider population. So my opinion, unless something really has been a real drastic breach, then I don't think we should be seeking to apportion blame. I think we have to accept it as part of this football season and adjust and adapt accordingly, because as I said, we've been relatively fortunate so far. We've had, obviously, Alex missed the game against Aberdeen, but other than that, we've had fixtures that have been uninterrupted. But I'm sure it may happen to us at some point.
And finally from me, common goal with Ryan Porteous giving 1% of his wage to those less fortunate. How great is that from him?
Yeah, I think he must be one of the highest earners here now that he's affording to give up some of his wages. But no, it's a terrific gesture for Ryan. I think it's recognition. I think it has grown maturity as well, both as a player and as a person. And I think it's also recognition of the changing world we live in. I have 2 daughters, and my eldest plays football, so undoubtedly now I'll come under pressure to do the same and do what Ryan's done. But no, I think it's a terrific gesture from thus far, and I think the first Scottish player at elite level, I think, to do so. I think he deserves credit for that.
I want to say finally, but now you've said that, is your daughter set on being a highway?
Well, at the moment, she because we play on the other side of the border, she's not quite sure if she wants to play for Scotland or England, which is worrying. So that's so what happens. It's a big concern. No, she a lot for her at the moment is enjoyment for it, and you know, having two girls, probably when I was younger, I didn't imagine that I would be standing watching them play football at the weekends, but I get an enormous amount of enjoyment from it. So long may that continue.